So first of all, I always think that it's best if people understand why they're doing something, it always makes it a little bit easier to deal with. And so I want to just for a few minutes go over why are we doing this? You know, what's the need? Many of you know that last summer, starting in June of last summer, the state auditors paid us a visit. And they do that for all schools that are in the process of going through the reaccreditation process with SACS. That's required so that they can then submit to SACS their financial stability and their compliance with all of the federal regulations prior to going through that reaccreditation process. So the auditors came on board. We have not had a federal compliance here in at least 10 years. And so when they came in, they sat down and went through everything that we were doing with financial aid on federal Title IV dollars. They found that we had two areas that we were in violation, or that were findings that they call it. One of them was R2T4, which stands for Return to Title IV, and the other was on student enrollment reporting. Okay, and I don't want to get too far down in the weeds because this is all stuff that you may not even be interested in, but I want you to understand the background on why. The federal regulations, and I'm talking about R2T4 now, Return to Title IV, say that a student who withdraws from all of their classes, if they are receiving federal Pell money, and they withdraw from all of their classes, not just one, but if they withdraw from all classes prior to 60% of the semester, financial aid is required to do a return of funds calculation on that student. And they are then required, the institution is required to submit back to the feds the prorated amount of money that that student received that they were short of that 60% point. Does that make sense? So if they made it to 50% of the semester before they withdrew from all of their classes, that return of funds calculation would basically be the difference between where they were and the 60%, which would be 10%. And they would have to calculate 10% of all of the federal Pell money that they got, and that then has to be remitted back to the federal government. The feds say that all of that has to be done within a 45-day window, which is an incredibly short amount of time for all of the processing that has to take place. So that's the R2T4 issue that we were having an issue with. And I put this on here just as a side note. There is a community college, and I'm not going to name the college, you may already be aware of them, right here in eastern North Carolina, who the feds came in and did an audit, and they found that they were in violation of R2T4 and fined the school not only the amount of money that they were short in sending back, but there's also a financial penalty that they tack on. And it accumulated to the tune of about $3 million that this small, rural, eastern North Carolina community college had to send back to the feds. Our total budget is about $12 million. You fine us $3 million and it will almost shut the doors. So that's why this is of such high priority that we have got to be in compliance so that we don't jeopardize the future of the institution. And I say this to you because schools all across the state and across the country are dealing with this issue. R2T4 and student enrollment reporting are the two #1 most common findings that auditors have across the state and across the country. So when they got us for these two things, they looked at us and said, this is the same thing we find just almost everywhere we go. So it wasn't that we were doing anything really bad, it just we were not doing it as well as we needed to do it. So schools are wrestling with this. Everybody's trying to figure out how is the best way to handle this strict window of 45 days that we've got to get the attendance in, get the calculations done, get the money sent back, and stay within that 45-day window. So Forsyth Tech, I just happened to see this the other day, Forsyth Tech did an informal survey on one, it was either the registrar or the financial aid director's listserv, asking about how many schools were attendance taking and how many were non-attendance taking for the purposes of return to Title IV. That came back and there were 27 schools, which includes us, that I've gone to attendance taking, and there were only 6 that responded that they were not attendance taking, which is what we used to be, or what we kind of are right now until we get into the summertime when web attendance becomes a mandatory thing. So you can see that schools are moving this direction, and it is all revolving around trying to get their arms around R2T4 and how to deal with this and keep their institutions in a sound, good position with the Fed so that they're not subject to, yes, Cynthia.
When does the 45 days start? From the last day of attendance or from the withdrawal date?
It comes, the Feds say that it happens when we are notified. And so what we're going to talk about with web attendance is there's going to be a report that Melissa's office will run every week. And it'll run over, actually either Friday night or early Monday morning, but it will go through and it will search all of web attendance for all of the L's, which you're going to hear more about from Amanda in just a few minutes, for all of the L's that have been input. And that L will signify that student's last date of attendance. And then that will automatically be generated to her, which will then go to financial aid. So every Monday, financial aid will receive a report of all of the L's that were entered last week. So that's going to get us much closer, get us started earlier on being able to process any of those return of funds calculations.
So to start from the last day of attendance?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, good question. I think that's all I have. If there's not any other questions, then what I would like to do is I'd like to turn it over to Amanda. I appreciate Amanda doing this for us because we on Melissa's side and obviously myself, we don't have any classes that are assigned to us, so we don't have anything to be able to pull up and demonstrate for you. But Amanda has graciously accepted the help or the request for help to do this, and so I'm going to turn it over to her. She's the expert in it, and then we'll finish up with Melissa on your handout.
All right. So, you work with what you've got. I can't actually open up my rosters and show you in real time what's done in web attendance because it would be a FERPA violation for you to be able to see my roster with students. So I'm going to show you some things in real time, and then when it comes to showing you the rosters, I've taken screenshots that I've redacted the names from, so that you can see everything that's in web attendance, but it just, you won't actually get to see me hit things like submit and next, and see it roll over. So, step number 1, this is the hardest step. Go to the Beaufort County Community College website, okay? Once you get it rolled up, you're going to scroll down to the bottom, and at the bottom you'll see a link for Web Advisor. You're going to click on that link. All right, this page is going to come up. The first thing that you really need to do is you need to go log in up here. It doesn't do you any good to hit the employees button because then that's going to take you to like your W-2 and that kind of information. So you'll want to just go ahead and log in first with your normal credentials. If this is your computer, you can give yourself a hint. And if it's your computer, normally it'll save your login information for you. Once you put it in, hit submit. Okay, once you've logged into Web Advisor, this is essentially what you're going to see. And the tab that we need is that green faculty tab. That's where you're going to go to be able to access web attendance. So I'm going to click on that. All right. Now, it's going to pull up this sheet here that you have some options on. Sometimes when I log into web attendance, I have 3 or 4 options. Other times when I log into web attendance, I have these 2 that you see right here. Whatever the options are, the option that you're going to want to choose here is web attendance tracking. Okay. And click on that link. Once you do that, you can see that it's opened up again to some other options. You're going to choose the attendance tracking option that's at the top. None of these other options are going to do anything for you. They're for the registrar's office and other entities, we'll say. All right, so I've clicked on attendance tracking, and what we see here now are a few things. The first thing is you see a list of my courses. If you basically you have to roll through this list, and the more courses that you've had that have been logged into web attendance, the longer this list is going to be. You'll need to locate whatever your class is. Here, for example, with this class, critical thinking, for example, you see I have 2 rosters for that class. The bottom roster that you're seeing, that's for the regular portion of the class that meets on Monday and Wednesday. For the hybrid portion that meets online, that's a separate roster that appears right above it. You can normally tell which roster you're looking at by the information that's provided here. So if you're teaching a class that has a lab or that's a hybrid class, or for some other reason meets in a different situation than Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, face-to-face, you're going to have multiple rosters, and you're going to have to go through this process for every single one. Okay? And that process is not super difficult. What you'll do is you'll go down here, you'll click on the class that you want here in these choose one options. I picked English 111 section 2 just for an example. And up here you have a form start date. So it's going to auto-populate whatever date. If you want an earlier date, like the beginning of term, you're going to have to put in whatever that date is. So for example, our term started on the 8th of January. So I would go in there and I would input the 8th of January if that's where I wanted to start. If I just wanted to take attendance for today, then I could leave it as is and hit submit. Some of you are going to take attendance daily in class, and so the most recent day might be the best way for you to go. Others of you are going to take attendance in class throughout the week and then enter that attendance on Friday or at some point, and so you may need to back the date up a little bit. So you just have to be cognizant about when you want the spreadsheet to start. In this case, what I would do is if I wanted it to start at the beginning of term, I would type in 01, 08, 18. And when I was satisfied that I picked the right class, put in the right date, I would hit the submit button. Now I can't actually hit the submit button because it'll pull up my roster. So what I've done is I've made some screenshots here of what it will look like. As soon as you hit that enter button, this is what you're going to be seeing. I've tried to zoom in a little bit so that you can see better. You're going to have your course information listed up here at the top, another indication of what you've got going on. And then underneath of it, you have a guide. Let's see if I can zoom in a little better. A guide that tells you what all the letters mean. So, if your student is absent, for example, you're going to put an A. If your student is just enrolling, you're going to put an E. So like we had inclement weather this term, we didn't have official enrollment for this particular class until the 10th. And so you see I have a string of E's down the line. There's some students who enrolled on different dates, but you can see those E's in there. What that indicates to the registrar's office is that the student has enrolled. Say what? Entered the class. You can see over here also where I took attendance during these dates that I have A's in here for when the student was absent. There are other situations where you might put another letter. Let's say the student entered the class, but they were late when they entered. If you wanted to, you could put an ET in there, if that's what you wanted to document. If it was their last day of attendance, you're going to put an L. And likely, you're going to have a lot of A's in front of that L. So it takes a little while to figure out whether a student's not coming. So you might have a string of A's in here, 3 or 4 or 5 of them before you have that L. And as soon as you enter that L, my understanding is that the registrar's office, it'll be sort of automatic from there. They'll look at the L, they'll take it, and they'll handle the process from there. Right?
That is correct. You will not have to submit any of that withdrawal paperwork anymore where the student, you want to drop the student, you won't have to do that.
Right, you don't have to do it. Yes, ma'am?
I just want to clarify. So, if we have a student that is absent, and I know we're going to go over the policy or whatever for the amount of days that we stated, we're not putting the L at the first date of absence, we're just putting it at the whatever date.
Yeah, that day that you've decided, so you've got this kid hasn't shown up 4 times and now you've had it and you're like, all right, dude, you're out. That's when you put the L. So yeah, you'll have a lot of A's in front of that L. If they're tardy and you keep track of tardies, you can put a T in there. It's very simple. And you've got a key up here that lets you know what each of those things mean. If you have someone not show, like they didn't enter the class at all, there's a no-show column here that's right next to their status, and it's just a little checkbox, and so if they were to not show, you'd click that little checkbox, and that's the equivalent of the NA that we used to put on the paper rosters, right? Whatever the census date is the last day for that student to enroll, and we don't have that marked yet, okay? They are, I guess, talking about maybe trying to mark the census date within web attendance so that it's easier to spot, but that might be something down the road. Either way, you know about attendance as it is, where they have to have enrolled in the course in order for it to count, or entered the course.
We have requested that. One of the things that I think Brian brought to us from Faculty Senate was the request to be able to highlight the column or the day that would be the census date for that class. That, what we found, will require some customization in colleague that IT would have to do, and so we've requested that, and I don't know where that stands with them yet.
It would still appear the same, you know, it would just be a different color for that particular column. Just to make the census date a little easier for you to spot if you don't know it off the top of your head. Now, whenever you're entering information into web attendance, you can obviously see the student name over here. You can see when the student added the course. And if the student has dropped the course, you can see their drop date as well. And my experience with previous schools with putting in an L is that eventually, once that L has been processed, there will be a withdrawal date there that shows you when that L was actually processed by the registrar or whomever. So that's a pretty good indication for you if you need to just kind of keep track of your attendance otherwise outside of web attendance. Now, when you've entered all of your information in, there's some important steps you have to take. The first is you need to decide, is this one, am I done? Or do I need to continue adding in attendance beyond the dates that I see listed here? If you're not done and you need to take attendance for farther than, let's say, the 17th of January, you're going to go down here to this little box that I'm kind of running the mouse across. If you were to click that, it would drop down a menu that says, you know, next or previous. And that's about scrolling the page. So if you want to scroll forward and get dates that are farther down in January, you're going to hit next. If you've done that and then you need to go back, you're going to hit previous. In either case, once you've chosen that option, there are two boxes down here that are basically your electronic signature. The first box is sort of highlighted in tan. The box underneath of it is not highlighted at all. You are always, throughout the term, as you're entering in attendance, going to click on that first box. Do not ever, ever, ever click on the second box until you're ready to be done, like you're done with that class, you know, everything's turned in, you're running out the door, okay? Because if you click that bottom box, it's going to block web attendance for you. You're not going to be able to get back in there and take attendance. You're going to have to contact the registrar and get them to unlock it from their end. It's going to be a process. It's probably going to be frustrating for you. So don't ever hit that box until like you're running out the door last day of the term. Now, what I did was I showed you what would happen if you don't hit that box. Because even if you entered no attendance, none. I did this earlier today when I was taking screenshots. Even if you enter no attendance, you just want to scroll to the next page, you have to click that box. Because if you don't, web attendance is going to reject what you've done. And it's going to take you back to the same page you've been looking at, and it's going to give you a warning up at the top that basically not all attendance has been recorded for those dates, that you need to go back and resubmit. Now you know, of course, you didn't enter any attendance, so why is it telling you this? I don't know. It's just the way it is. So you have to click that little signature box or else you're going to get this message. And then you're going to have to do it all over again. And so this is what the page will look like when you've made an error. Any error that you've made in web attendance will show up this way. So let's say like you recorded an L for a student and then that slipped your mind, or you just got confused about the columns and where they lay, and you go in and try to put an absent for a student that has already had their last day of attendance, web attendance is going to kick that out. And you're going to get the same kind of message up here at the top that says that you have an error that you need to redo it. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, if you have done it correctly, and you've clicked that box, then what's going to happen is it's just going to scroll you over to the next dates in line. So you see that the last roster, or the last page that I showed you on the roster ended on the 17th. This one picks up on the 18th. For the most part, The days that are listed should be the days of your course. Because I messed around with web attendance with the dates just to get the screenshots, that may be the difference. But like this class, for example, meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it doesn't meet every day of the week. I wouldn't have had class the 18th, 19th, and 20th, 3 days in a row. You do need to check to make sure that those dates are correct. Web attendance still has some bugs. So for some of my classes, no dates are listed. For others of my classes, it has every day of the term listed, even though I don't have class on those dates. But that's just something you're going to want to have to pay attention to. Yes?
Basic law enforcement training, mine's very fluid calendar.
Uh-huh.
It's a Monday through Friday, various weekends. Will I be able to manipulate those dates up there? Mine's fluid.
No, that's not something that you have control over. That's something that I would imagine would be preset about your course. So if you have Saturday classes, you're probably going to have Saturday dates listed in web attendance.
Saturday, Sunday, it'd be Monday through Sunday.
Right, and if you don't, then you're going to need to contact the registrar about those dates not being in there correctly. Does that help?
Yeah, like I said, it's just this Monday through Friday, various weekends, and it depends on me from the weather and my instructors, and I'm always having to readjust the calendar.
Sure. Yeah, when it comes to the dates, those questions, you're just gonna, I would say, stay in contact with the registrar about that, work it out, because I've not had that kind of course. So I don't actually know.
Thank you.
Brian, did you have a question?
You answered my question, but it goes along the same lines of the differences, and you may be able to talk about that more at the divisional level. But going from every day, just for an example of difference, in an online class, every day lists up to the census date, and then we go by week.
Right.
So, again, making sure that we're able to communicate that to the registrar's office, and we contact Melissa, is that right? If there's an issue?
Sure, yeah, I mean, if
the
it,
structure of the dates, is that right, Melissa?
Yeah, and then we'll have to look at Collie, because web attendance pulls from Collie and how the section is built. So we can look at that, but like Amanda said, sometimes there's just some quirkiness, and because this is so new, I'm definitely not by any stretch an expert, but that's what we would have to look at, like how the section is built, and see if there's anything we can do to.
From a faculty standpoint, we need to know who to go to, who manages the system. We don't need to know the nuts and bolts of it, but we need to know who to go to say, this is how we need it done. And in the hopes that that will get corrected. So just so we're all clear, we need to contact you
Yes.
for any structural changes, management changes
Yeah.
to the force itself.
And we'll do what we can, but I can't guarantee that we can make it look exactly the way you want, because of the way that web attendance is structured and the way it pulls from colleagues.
at other schools, where I guess web attendance has been in the works for a while, the system is sort of smoothed out. My experience has been that the class is set up exactly already the way it's set up. So I've never had to really communicate a whole lot with the registrar over it because it was already preset. If it was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, all the dates were already in there. If it was a Tuesday, Thursday class, all the dates were already in there. If it was a hybrid class and it was a strange Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday hybrid, and so on the faculty end, your only responsibility then is to go in and put E for entered, A for absent, T for tardy, and of course the big important L if they stop. Like the way the system is set up is not something that faculty manipulate at other schools. It's something that's already preloaded in there, and the faculty are more or less just going in and entering the attendance, and that's where it ends. Yes, ma'am.
This might be another individual section class, but not necessarily this semester, but at some point in the future. I have students out in clinicals. I might have one student doing 12 hours because that's the shift that's available on that same day. Another student may be doing 8 hours. How do I track 8 as opposed to 12 hours so it can end all my students have 624 clinical hours that they need?
It's not going to track hours for you.
Just
It's only going to track whether they were there at clinical that day.
Does that make sense? So, okay, so you as an instructor, I mean, you'll keep track of their hours. You'll make sure that they have the right hours. But all web attendance is doing is okay. But yeah, all web attendance is doing is just making sure that they're present or absent. That's it. Sure. All right. So, if you've done it incorrectly, you would get that message at the top that I showed you in red. If you've done it correctly, it's just going to roll right on over. And if you want to keep going with it, you just keep checking next from your little drop-down menu and checking that signature box. Now, something else I've experienced with web attendance lately is I've gone and I've checked the next box, or I've selected next, and I've checked the signature box, and I've hit submit, and instead of it rolling over to the next set of dates, it's taken me right out of web attendance back to the menu, where I've had to basically click on web attendance again, gone through the same process with the same result, and so what I had to do was actually manually type in the day of the next time. So if you're having that problem, I would say also go to the registrar and indicate that that's an issue for you. I've seen that kind of thing happen before. And again, I've seen web attendants reject attendance where there was a mistake that was made. So once you put that L in, you're not going to put any other attendance, period. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see. Now, Melissa put together a web attendance guide that she's going to disperse among faculty. And what it does is it breaks down for you with screenshots exactly what I have just showed you. And it explains to you step by step what to do. So you can see step 1 here is go to the Beaufort County Community College website, click on Web Advisor down at the bottom. You have links here to show you where to log in, along with screenshots. You have what it looks like on the login page that I've just shown you. You have a picture here of where to go to the faculty section. Pictures all throughout everything that I have just shown you. She's got stuff on here that kind of shows you if you're in that spot where you have multiple rosters for the same class. So you have a class, you have a lab, you have clinicals, you have something else going on. You might have 3 or 4 rosters. And they will be grouped together. So she's shown you that on the guide. She's broken down the information that you put in web attendance. You know that an A means that they're absent, put an A. If it's their last date of attendance, put an L. She has given you some screenshots of this class. Of course, the names are removed so that we're not violating purpose here. And she's done some things to explain some of the questions that I'm hearing, like in Erica's section where you're going to have multiple rosters. You're probably in the same boat, right? She's sort of given an explanation of where those rosters are in this guide that she's set up. I'm showing you visually how they're grouped together.
And just had a nice heart attack back here when we saw 5.
It is like, I mean, in other schools, you know, again, I've had multiple rosters for the same class. For hybrid classes, I already have multiple rosters. I understand it can be overwhelming when you have 5 for one class. That's a registrar thing. It's not an Amanda thing.
It's actually an auditor thing. What I've been told is that web attendance was designed to meet auditing standards, and they want to see separate, clinical and internet and face-to-face and all that.
Which is weird to me, based on what Vic just said about hours, from that standpoint. We'll talk about that when we're in our division, but that is a weird practice.
Okay, so
Just for clarification, for the clinical, like that one roster, if we have a student that's on a Saturday clinical and another student on a Sunday clinical, can we just put both of their attendance for that Friday that's already listed for they want them the day that they're actually in clinical? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying, and I don't know the answer,
Okay.
so I'll have to find out.
Yeah.
Especially since it's not.
That might be a conversation that we need to include Dr. Ainge in on, how to handle that.
So, is there anything that anybody would like for me to show them again? Or did you catch on? Pretty simple, pretty intuitive. Dealing with how many rosters you have, that's going to be the difficult part. Dealing with the little mistakes that can happen in web attendance, sure. But the actual process of it, does it seem pretty straightforward and simple? All right, I'm like with my students, I'm just going to count that as a yes. Okay, all right, well, Melissa, there you go.
Thank you.
Yep.
So then we should have, when we put that final submit, the box on the line, just before we're leaving to go out the door for the summer or Christmas, we should have X number of days, the total number
there's a column, a days column, and that shows you how many days that they were present.
Okay.
It's next to, I think it's next to the no-show column.
So if I have I meet 3 times a week, at the end, I should have attendance for 48 days? Okay.
Yeah, it's in the column called days, it's after the no-show column.
Okay.
And that, marks the
Yeah, it'll mark how many days you were present,
Okay.
as opposed to how many days they were absent.
Okay, the one last thing we want to talk about is the colored handouts that Rick brought in. These are just the procedures for recording the last date of attendance, which is the main reason why we're doing all this. If you look at the blue one, that's the procedure for instructors. And so I know you all can read just fine, but number 1, it says that it must be completed by the close of business on Friday. So this is a weekly requirement. Like Amanda said, you can go in every single day and do it. Just take the couple minutes it takes to do it every day. Or she said, you know, some teachers, they keep track on paper, and then at the end of the week, they just go in and fill in their attendance for the whole week. So however you want to do it is up to you, but it is required. And Dr. Luke has asked me to run a report every week, not only to look for L's, but also to look for people who aren't using web attendance. So make sure that you use it. For number 2, this is really, really important. This tells you the number of classes that a student can miss before we need to administratively withdraw them. And there's a matrix down below, and for 16 weeks classes, if they miss 5 times in a row, you're required to administratively withdraw them. Yes, ma'am?
I have an issue with that because if I have a 64 contact hour class, 10% is 6.4 classes. So I wait for 7 classes to follow the 10% rule. But 5, I'm not giving them the entire amount of time.
This amount that is on here has been approved, it's been vetted through faculty last month, or not last month, excuse me, last semester when we did the teacher forums where they had opportunities to look at this. It's been vetted through faculty senate. It's also been vetted through senior staff. And this is the amount of time that was set so that we would be able, because if you start going longer than that, you start creeping into that 45-day window and shortening the amount of time then to be able to get that money back to the Fed. So that's why these numbers of days or meeting times were agreed upon.
So will the 10% be taken out of the catalog?
Yes. Yes.
Kind of piggyback off of that, if it's a math class that meets 5 days a week, if they miss 1 week, we give them an out. If it's a Tuesday, Thursday, they might go 2.5 weeks.
That is possible, yes.
And also, you know, since different classes happen, you know, we're basically kicking them out for missing different percentages of the class.
And remember this, too. Yes, you are correct, there could be variances in the percentages. But remember this, you as the instructor have the authority and the leeway, if that student is communicating with you that they are having some kind of mitigating circumstance, and they've stayed in communication with you, then you are not required to drop them from that class. This is for the student who you've heard nothing from and who just hasn't shown up for 5 straight days or 5 straight meeting times. That's the ones that we have to deal with right there. But if they're communicating with you, and hey, I had a car wreck, I've hurt my back and I'm going to be out for 2 weeks, can you send me my assignments online or whatever? You don't have to drop those students.
Do you have to count
So,
the absent?
do you have to
Yes.
count that?
Yes.
Well,
So
what
You
what
can
happens
count them
after
absent.
5 days?
It's
As
written
long as
into
we
the,
don't put an L?
yeah, as long as you don't put an L in there, that's fine.
Okay.
But it's up to you to make that judgment. You as the instructor have the authority to make that judgment of, has this student communicated with me? Do they have extenuating circumstances that I want to allow them to remain in the class?
So they can have 10 A's and
If you can,
twice as many as required.
if you can justify that they've communicated with you and that they have mitigating circumstances, Yes.
And the intent of that was from faculty saying that, through faculty senate, that they wanted the ability, they just didn't want to arbitrarily kick somebody out that they've been trying to work with, because we understand things happen for students. So the intent is that students are making their best effort to complete the work, but they have something getting in their way, and it's allowing us to work with them. And not just a hard and fast 5 absences and you're done, but a way for us to work with them to get through whatever they're working on, so that they can get back on track and stay in class.
That's correct. Thank you, Brian. Yes.
It says here, my understanding that if they miss, now of course this is previous policy, 10% across the class. So what if they miss 5, but they weren't necessarily back to back?
Great question. What happens if I miss 2 days, I show up one day, and then I miss 3 more? Do you have to record Min and L in there? The answer to that is no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you? Yes.
So you have to not.
You as the instructor still are the authority in the classroom, and if a student is not living up to the instructional requirements, the academic requirements that you have, or if they meet, if your attendance policy is tighter and you don't allow them to miss but a certain number of days, then yes, you still have that authority as the instructor. Larry?
Like mine is 5%, which is 32 hours, 640. But he can go for the entire 8 months of my academy. So will it affect me in, because they could go to like 6 months and be fine as long as about a state, they don't miss 32 hours. But once they hit that 32-hour mark, I have to dismiss
Yeah.
them.
Okay.
Am I okay? Okay, just continue on like I'm doing then.
Yep, continue like you're doing.
And this is information you're really going to want to put in your syllabus, because, you know, this is a new policy and a new procedure. And for students who aren't used to it, who are used to coming and going and managing to pass the classes, they're not going to be used to this. And for brand new students, of course, it's something you're going to want to make them aware of, that if you do miss X number of absences in a row, you will be withdrawn from the class unless you have circumstances. So it's really important to communicate this to students. I would say your syllabus would be the best place. And on our end, of course, we'll talk about it during orientation and whenever we have an opportunity to get that information to students. But coming from the instructor is really the most valuable route to get this information to students. So I think you're really going to want to put this in your syllabus so they know where they stand and there won't be any surprises.
Let's by the same token, is this going to be published on the website?
Well, yeah, they're in SharePoint.
No, I'm talking about the students. Will the students be able to refer to this, their expectations on the website in a visible manner?
Sure, yeah.
We could request that, couldn't we, Jay?
Sure.
Remember, this will go into effect the summer of this year. So this will all take effect in the summer. So if that will help, we'll put it everywhere we can. Yes, Ben?
And with that 5 absence for a 2-week class, so is it fair for us to say in our syllabus that, just because this is replacing the 10% rule, can we say that a student, instructor has discretion to withdraw a student who has missed more than 5, whether or not they are consecutive? Okay.
And Mike, to your point, this procedure is on the website?
I believe it is, yeah.
It's up there.
It is.
It's up there.
It's in the policies and procedures.
But is there something we can do to make it something for students, because they're not gonna go looking? I'm sure we'll put it on our syllabus template. But I think what Mike's saying is to make it like, hello, this is new.
This is a change, this is something we're doing different, so the students understand.
And I would also, definitely announce it in class. We work with students on a lot of different topics, and I frequently ask them, what's the best way to communicate this information to students? And across the board, they say, have the teacher announce it in class. So I think it's important for you all to inform students and have it be on Blackboard and syllabus, and like I said, we'll put it everywhere we can. But for students, that's coming from the instructor, I think, is the most direct way. We can email students, but only, I think, 17% of students check their email regularly. We could text blast it, but half the phone numbers in colleague aren't current. I mean, there's a lot of downfalls to the other ways too. Yes?
We'll make sure to get on the website and the homepage.
That would be
So we
good.
can't put the whole procedure up there, but we can draw their attention to it. Attention, new attendance procedure, look here, we'll put them all around.
But I think it would be a good idea, of course, I won't be here to do it, but I think it would be a good idea to also include that in our new student orientation packet. So when students come in, that is a piece of the presentation that everybody hears. Yes.
On the blue sheet under number 5, where it talks about reasons for attendance other than missing, like discipline or grades or what have you. One of the things it says here is to immediately contact the Vice President of Student Services. Is there a specific way we're supposed to do that? Is it just supposed to be a formal email or phone call?
Well, and I don't know who will be taking my place, but, you know, I have taken emails. We do have an incident report form that some instructors have used when they've had disciplinary incidents in their classroom. I've had others that have just sent me an email and said, I've had an issue with such and such.
Well, mine are typically academic performance, they didn't turn in the work, and there's no way they can pass after a certain point. Is that like something that we're supposed to email you?
Yeah,
or
that'd be
whoever's in
fine.
position?
That would be fine. I'm speaking for somebody, I don't know who the heck it is, but I would think that would be fine. All that does is give us a heads up so that when that student sees that they are no longer in the class and they want to come and complain to the registrar or whoever, we'll at least have an idea why they're not in the class anymore. Ken?
Going back to the 5 consecutive days, what I'm hearing is that we can be more stringent than this policy. And if we are more stringent, if a student uses this policy to appeal that, will we have support from administration from that?
If it's in your syllabus.
Yeah, I would say that you definitely want to have it in your syllabus. I'm speaking again for people I don't know. I would think so, but I really can't speak to that. But I will say this, you know, this procedure is a work in progress. You know, so I would say to you all that if you go through the summer or you go through the fall and you find these quirky little situations like this, I would certainly bring it up to your VP and ask that, hey, let's go back in and revisit that matrix. We found that this situation didn't fit nice and neat in those compartments. Can we add something to that? I would certainly think that they would be willing to do that. Jay?
Rick, I think I understand Ken's question, and sounds to me like this attendance procedure, this last state of attendance procedure, we should view this to be in compliance with R2T4. But for good educational pedagogy, if students can't miss more than 3 days in class, and you define that on your syllabus, I don't think, I can only speak for myself, only one member of the administration that would have any pushback.
And item 2 on the purple handout for the students' procedure, it addresses that. It mentions that students can be withdrawn when their absences affect their quality of work. And in classes like what you teach, it might be just 2 or 3. So you always have that left.
So are we locking ourselves into 5 consecutive days by continuing to illustrate that on the procedure? Like, should the word consecutive be there? Or does that like actually give the student more power to fight against our decision to withdraw them if they haven't missed 5 consecutive days and then 4 and then 2 more later or whatever?
Well, you just would have to be able to articulate what the basis for your decision for dropping that student was. It would be the same as it is under the procedure now.
That's, the 5 is just what kicks in, say, automatic, like you put in the L and then I automatically take care of it. If it's, there's another reason that, you know, you're not stuck with the 5 because there are other reasons. That's just a way to, you know, students who just come 1 or 2 times and then disappear.
What it also does in terms of the R2T4 is because we have some instructors on campus that have a very rigid attendance policy and very much have stuck to the 10%. As Cynthia was mentioning, when you hit that amount, then I'm going to drop you. We have other instructors that have a very liberal attendance policy. And some of them, we, in the financial aid office, would not find out that the student stopped attending in October, and we wouldn't know that until December 16th. And so you can obviously see that by that time, we are well out of that 45-day window and in violation of R2T4. So there has to be some matrix, there has to be some number, arbitrary number that we come up with that says, once they miss this number in a row, action has to happen so that we can stay in compliance. Brian?
And just for clarity from faculty senate standpoint, when we put this out and we started the discussion from our side, this procedure was designed and vetted for reporting last day of attendance for Title IV funds. We've also brought up and asked, and I've got it scheduled with Dr. Range to ask more questions, because we also have new procedures, I guess, that are going to go in place for attendance-taking institution. So that might answer some of your questions as far as how we're, as faculty, handle things that come up in our classrooms that don't have anything to do necessarily with reporting an L. Let's say if they're disruptive, how do you handle that? They've missed academic performance for nursing, how do you handle that? To fall under the academic side, as well as replacing our current ICR reports using web attendance. So those things are also in the works. My plan is to ask these questions to Dr. Ainge, probably with the deans and present as well. So I would suggest you might want to roll yourself into that one too. Because I believe this was not designed to be a one-fit-all procedure.
Thank you. It is not going to be a one-size-fits-all.
For keeping that student in who wants to keep at it, I've got an email from the student saying, yeah, I want to keep at it, that's enough.
In your judgment,
Okay.
as the instructor. Now I would say this, it does say in there mitigating circumstances, so I would encourage you to, I hope they've communicated some kind of mitigating circumstances other than, hey, look, I just didn't want to come today, I want to stay at it.
Do they have, is there something like, do I need to have something more than, yes, I want to stay in the class, so I need to have 2 minutes? So I need to have something.
I would have some kind of mitigating, that's what's in the procedure, mitigating circumstances that are preventing that student from being able to be there. Jay?
Rick, about Ben's question, so, I'm not battling anymore anymore, but you just go by, and then you go back and report the last day of attendance that was 2 weeks prior, because that really crunches down the R2T4 timeline. That's really something you have to, I think, consider when you investigate.
Because we could have a case where someone racks up 9 or 10 L's and finally it's like, okay, well, that L is, excuse me, not 9 or 10 absences, but that L is still going to come after all of those, even if some student says, no, I want to keep plugging along, and then finally we're like, no. We're not going to go back and backdate.
I would just say to you that I think that when you are too forgiving in that circumstance, then it denigrates the quality of the instruction that you're giving them. So, I think that if they're there and they're learning from you, then there's value in that. They need to be there. You have something to give.
But if we're recording every week, and if we're doing it at the end of each week, then we have the opportunity to say, okay, you've missed 4, and so we can intervene. Sure. It shouldn't get to 10, 15 days down the road, and we're trying to catch it, right?
Hopefully this will also aid you in the academic performance of your students. When they're there, I mean, research shows when they're there, they're going to do better. So hopefully it will hold them to that standard. Yes, ma'am.
Just a random question. We're in clinical Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we don't leave clinical till sometimes 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, and attendance has to be put in by Friday afternoon. When you run these reports, I mean, obviously, I've got a clinical facility that we have no internet access whatsoever. And I know that seems really wild in today's day and time, but it's true, we can't even carry our cell phones in one of the facilities. So will we get a pass to internet Monday morning? Will you run the report for 2 weeks instead of 1 week to make sure you get, do you see what I'm asking?
Well, I know we can't run it 2 weeks because that's actually written into another procedure, the R2T4 procedure, which does not affect you all, it affects the registrar.
So
and
my ultimate
financial
question,
aid.
when we leave clinical that night, do we come back and log on?
No.
Our week will start Saturday and Friday, so we'll do it the week before.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm sure that there can be some type of.
And that,
arrangement
I
made.
mean, I'll be the one running the report, and like on Mondays, I'll run it, and I'll just be happy to work with whatever situation, as long as I know about it.
I know you all, some of you have classes, I don't mean to cut us short. I'll hang around if you have any other questions. Thank you all, and be patient, hang in there, we're all gonna work through this thing together. Some of us will work through this together.